let's talk about this Paul Wall and Terminology album.
It's great.
I think that's where we're at. Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul Wall and Terminology. Man, this album, I was impressed, man. I was impressed.
Highly impressive.
I don't even know what to say. I'm damn near speechless, man. I mean, just off of the first song itself, no
It's
asterisks, because it set the tone.
it did.
And I
It's
didn't know what I was about to hear because, listeners have been telling us we need to check this album out for a minute. And I was like, okay, start to finish. That's the name of the album, by the way. With Terminology and Paul Wall, I was like, okay, this is probably going to be like a cross between two worlds. But I never heard Paul Wall rhyme on stuff like this. And it came off really well.
not that
I
I
got the whole production lineup here. I don't know if you got it in front of you.
yeah, I wrote down the producers that did the stuff that Static didn't do.
Static did no asterisks. Ask Permission was Static. Recognize My Car was Pete Rock, which I really love that song. Thailand was Terminology. No Favors was Static Selector. Static Selector again on Clover Lane, my bad. How You Been was Dame Grease. No Tolerance was Static Selector. Money Phone was Jay Cardin. And Step Outside was Static Selector. You know what, man? Static Selector has his hat, has his name in the hat, excuse me, for Producer of the Year right now. He did some pretty dope work on here.
I'm gonna have to agree with you totally. First of all, I think this album so far, as we approach May, this is the surprise of the year
Oh,
because
easily. I
this
think
is.
it's an album of the year contention. I don't think it is, but it's up there. It's top five.
I agree with those sentiments, Mike. That's why it's the surprise of the year because this actually deserves some album of the year consideration. Because after listening to it, it's like, and this is what I mean. You have to make music that people enjoy no matter what you prefer. Do I prefer the stuff that Conway and Benny do? It's like, yeah. But after listening to this album and also with Currency's album, can I tell you that Conway and Benny's album are succinctly better than those two albums I just named, continuous and start to finish? It's like, well, no, this is right there with those, which makes it album of the year contender. And
Yeah.
so I'm with you. Definitely the surprise of the year. Who would have thought Paul Wall would team up with Terminology, with Static Selector doing the beats with guys like Pete Rock and Dame Grease showing up, and it would meld this beautifully and seamlessly. It's a wonderful project, Mike.
Man Nan says, no slight to Paul Wall, but Terminology killed it. I got to give Paul Wall credit for his versatility, though, because he's the
Yes,
one that had to step out of his comfort
yes.
zone, and he did a really good job at it. Ray
Can
Realm says,
you?
are y'all going to review Snoop's Drink Champs interview? I don't know if we're going to get to that, especially the Jay-Z, Eminem, and 50 situation. Eh, who knows?
We might get to it Friday after we talk
We
about
might.
pushes out. Right.
But
And
yeah, go ahead.
here's another thing. Like, no, I actually want you to espouse upon your thought about the whole Southern artist in this realm thing, about what you were telling me earlier, because I think that people need to hear that about Paul Wall's performance. Because when people are like Terminology killed it, it's like, look at what Paul Wall just did. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, I guess my first perception of this, and usually when you have a Southern artist get with somebody with, I guess more of a traditional hip hop sound or style, they they tend to adjust to the Southern artist. But Paul Wall did the exact opposite. He was rhyming over stuff that at least I had never heard him, rhyme over before. I don't know if Static Selector and Paul Wall have worked together before, or Pete Rock. I don't think so. But Paul Wall was the one that had to make the biggest adjustments, and he did a great job at it. I thought this was, man, a pleasant
So
surprise.
it was. So here's what I mean about taking away from Paul Wall. Is Paul Wall the MSC that Terminology is? No. Does he sound as fluid or as comfortable as Terminology at these beats on times? No. But this is pretty remarkable for a Southern MC. And this is what I mean from this regard. Well, the album's not really missing anything or lacking anything when Paul steps to the mic. And
Yeah.
what I really realized, and this is something we got to give credit for, well, you can tell Paul is a professional rapper who goes to work, Mike. He did his fucking job on this album. You can't ask too many Southern MCs to step into this East Coast sounding climate or album and perform at the level that Paul just performed at, especially when we have no evidence of him being able to do that really, Mike. And so even though Termanology is the star of this album, Paul Wall's performance needs to be acknowledged, and more Southern MCs maybe need to be able to get like him, because you're absolutely right. When these projects come together, they're always like, let's do this down south style production to make it better for this artist. And it kind of seems like Paul Wall walked into their world and was like, nah, I'm cool with doing this rap shit. Let's go. And did it well.
Because, the thing is, and not to cut you off, and I just want to finish this train of thought. I think they do that because, when the South started emerging with its sound, it's like, some East Coast artists piggybacked off of some of those sounds for radio play or whatever.
Yep.
And so it's not because they wanted to do that. And I think Biggie set that tone too when he did Notorious Thugs. And I know that Bone's not from, the South, but just being able to adjust to someone else's style and get their fans and their play, that kind of became the play. And I think that what Paul Wall's done is it's different. It changed the whole dynamic there where, like you said, a Southern MC could adjust to these records. And so, I would say I would like to see somebody like T.I. do something like this.
I thought about that.
I think certain people might need something like this just to do.
So Paul Wall, low-key, may have given some Southern artists a formula. T.I. was the first guy that I thought of, too, because here's the thing about it that people need to understand, and here's what I mean about Paul Wall's performance. No, Paul Wall helped this album go. This album is not an album of the year contender without Paul Wall. Recognize My Car is on here, right?
Yeah.
This isn't an album of the year contender without that. That's Paul Wall. That's Paul Wall and all his drip on some East Coast beat shit, literally by Pete Rock.
And shout out to Pete Rock, too, for being able to make a beat like that for this album. I didn't even know that was Pete Rock when I was listening to it.
No, me neither. No asterisks? You don't think Paul Wall snapping on no asterisks? I do.
Yeah, I like it, man. And I hate that it took us this long to get to it, but I'm glad we finally got to it. And
no, Mike, it just came out April 8th. We're not like super behind.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we're not super behind.
I give it like a 4.2, man. 4.25.
I was thinking, Mike, we gave Lotto's album a 4.25. I think it's better than that, so I was thinking 4.3.
Okay.
Yeah, because
we're not going all the way up to a 4.5.
We're gonna have to
talk about all our scales, and again, everything kind of gets adjusted as the year goes on, and as we've heard more things, and we see how certain things age. So,
right. I mean, because I've even thought because here's how this year is shaping up, and we've been doing this podcast for over 2 years now. But the way this year is shaping up, I don't know. We haven't had a year yet where we've gotten so many good albums this early on. Like, Mike, the first year,
people are outside.
People are outside like a motherfucker, Mike. Like the first year that we did this, Mike, this time, I want you to understand, around this time, 2 years ago when we were starting this podcast, Mike, the only albums that we had heard, Mike, that we thought were great 2 years ago, by this point, we were like, Jay Electronica's album is really good, and Alfredo and Pray for Paris are classic. And that's all we had by the end of April 2 years.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
2020 ended up being rounded out very well, too.
Mike, look at what we got right now, Mike. I'm still like 6-7 albums behind what I'm listening to, and we've probably rated about 7 to 10 albums that are over 4 purple tapes, and deservedly over 4.
Yeah.
It's not like they don't deserve these ratings. It's like, and it's not like I thought like, it's like, man, are we being too nice? Or are these motherfuckers really getting busy right now? And it's like, no, these motherfuckers are getting busy right now.